Good evening, everyone. My name is Olivia Amaya Ortiz, and I'm a Public Art Program Coordinator at New Mexico Arts, the state arts agency and a division of the Department of Cultural Affairs. Tonight, we are chatting with Marcus Xavier Chormicle, who is New Mexico Arts 2024 Artist in Residence at Lincoln Historic Site in Lincoln, New Mexico. I'm going to give him a few minutes to log in, if you'll just hang tight in the meantime. At Lincoln Historic Site in Lincoln, New Mexico. And let's see if he's joining as a host. The mission of the Artist in Residence program, in partnership with New Mexico Historic Sites, is to increase awareness of significant state cultural sites through the lens of contemporary creatives, such as Marcus, who's now on the call with us.
Hi, how's it going?
Chormicle. Okay, I'll finish up introduction and then we'll get going. It also gives some time for folks to log in. I'm really excited to have Marcus here with us tonight. We'll hear from him a bit about his creative practice, what he's been doing in residency, and some upcoming events to look forward to. Chormicle is Agua Caliente band of Cahuilla Indians, lineal descent, Chicano, and white American. He is a Las Cruces-based photographer who has been in residence at Lincoln Historic Site since late February. His work often speaks to power structures, economic imbalances, and racial injustices that shape lives in the American Southwest. And in addition to being a practicing artist, he is both the founder and a curator at CAV Gallery in downtown Las Cruces, New Mexico. Marcus received a bachelor's of journalism and a minor in digital marketing and studio art from the Cronkite School of Journalism and Mass Communication at Arizona State University in Phoenix. I have to mention that I am a Wildcat from U of A, so we're inherently opposed. Just kidding. Bear down. His work has been exhibited at the Rubin Center for the Visual Arts in El Paso, Texas, the Gone Tomorrow Gallery in Tucson, Arizona, Southampton Art Center in New York, and the Woodstock Center for Photography in New York, amongst others. While he's been in residence, Chormicle is exploring the legacy of the oryx species in southern New Mexico as it relates to colonizing histories of land and peoples in the region. He intends to deepen his understanding of the oryx habitat as well as create visual representations of the animal across the Lincoln Forest, Sacramento Mountains, and surrounding communities. All right, that's my end of things. Before we get started though, I just want to remind folks about the comment box at the bottom of your screen. This is really meant to be an informal conversation where we get to chat with Marcus. So feel free to utilize it if any questions arise, if you hear something that resonates, and feel free to send those heart emojis along if you hear something that speaks to you. With that being said, Marcus, I'll turn it over to you. Would you like to introduce yourself in your own words?
Thank you very much for the great introduction. I'm really excited to be here speaking on this work and to be in this residency out in Lincoln. It's been a really productive time for me already. I think I might be like just over halfway through it or coming up. Maybe this Friday is the halfway point, which is wild to me. But it's already been a really productive time, and this project is one that has been on my mind for a really long time, and so it's been really incredible to get to have this residency as a jumping off point to make new work, and this work kind of comes at a turning point in how I'm approaching my art, and I think it's a big part of it, and I can speak a little bit more about that as we get into the questions. But yeah, just grateful and excited, and thank you for sharing this platform with me.
Yeah, I think that's a great starting off point. We can take a few steps back. And for some folks who are watching and maybe aren't familiar with the oryx species, maybe you could tell us a little bit more about them, and then
Absolutely.
as well the project that you are working on.
So for those who don't know, and I found a lot of people, especially outside of southern New Mexico, aren't very familiar with the oryx at all. The oryx is a species of African antelope that was brought over to southern New Mexico, specifically the Tularosa Basin in the 60s. It's a creature from Africa, from the Sahara Desert, and It was brought over basically to have safari in the Southwest in the United States, and they brought over a captured population and they bred them in captivity here in the United States. They released 97 of the ones that were born on this continent into the wild, and that population has exploded since the 60s. And so now there's believed to be like around 5,000 of them living in the Tularosa Basin and beyond. And now they're considered as an invasive species because they're really, really adaptable and impressive animals that have kind of outcompeted all of the indigenous wildlife, and they also aren't running into the same parameters around their breeding that they find in Africa, as the Chihuahuan Desert is relatively very abundant, and so they're thriving here. And they were the people that had brought them in had anticipated them being hunted by mountain lion, and they haven't been to any degree that would help maintain the populations. And so humans are their only, really the only thing that keeps their population in any sort of check. And so that's kind of a really brief and simple history of them in the region. My family has hunted them. This is a one in the back that I think my grandma hunted. And so this is one of their skulls mounted here. And so I grew up around it, and my family would eat the meat and they would have the mounts in their homes. And so it was just this creature that I was aware of before. I'd only seen him one time in the wild, actually on this side of the Oregon Mountains, which is the mountain range here in Las Cruces. And so that's an example of them kind of extending beyond their intended habitat here in the state. And so yeah, they were just this very like special thing within my own family, and they have always been really fascinating to me as kind of like an ecological subject, and they're really strikingly beautiful. I have some prints here of the work I've been making so far, so this might be a good opportunity
Yeah,
to
we'd love to
show.
see them.
Let me see. I've been, oh man, I don't have like a great close up one actually of the oryx itself, just the skull. So another skull. But I'll link to my website, which I'll link to that at the end of the talk, and it has examples of some of the taxidermied ones. I haven't had an opportunity yet to go out into the field and with, but I'm setting up opportunities to go out with hunters and hunting guides to go out to the actual ranches that they live on in the Tularosa Basin and photograph them in the wild. And the idea is to photograph a hunt and to photograph the animal being taken on and off of the land. But yeah, I'm happy to show more of this here in a couple of minutes. But yeah, they're really, really impressive creatures. And so it being something that was, personally important within my family growing up, and then it's really great that it's become something that is informing my work now. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone in the comments said, awesome project. Glad you are using your talents to inform people about oryx in New Mexico. In your application, you kind of spoke about the parallels of colonization and indigenous histories in that region to the oryx. Can you elaborate on that a little bit, or maybe share some things you've
Yeah,
discovered
absolutely.
along the
I
way?
mean, the way that the oryx was brought over as part of a colonial project, I think, is really interesting. It says a lot beyond just the implications in southern New Mexico. I think like it's complex in a lot of different ways, but um, it's been brought here and it displaces indigenous species, and I think that kind of speaks to a metaphor of a lot of other colonial projects in certainly New Mexico and the rest of the country as well, and the continents, the two American continents, is certainly. So yeah, I think that the oryx kind of stands as the symbol. It's this like incredible creature that is so adaptable and pervasive and powerful, and it's brought here and just kind of unleashed into the land, and not really a ton of consideration, it seems, in the time when it was released. I mean, they certainly did some research, but it's become this kind of interesting animal that only has there's a lot of invasive species in the United States, but well, the one that it kind of also makes me think of is there's a population of hippopotamus in Colombia that were on the Pablo Escobar estate, and I guess after he was killed, or after he left the place, I don't know the history of this specific estate directly, but I've heard recent news stories about the hippopotamus there being loose and kind of terrorizing people. But then when there's conversations around how do we handle this population, it's like it's a Disney animal, like it was in it's not something that people want to see put down, euthanized.
Yeah.
And so I know in the 90s there were similar conversations here in New Mexico about culling the oryx population, but there was public backlash. And so the way that we kind of handle it is this kind of yearly hunt lottery where we send out a certain amount of tags for people to go hunt, and it's become industry here in New Mexico. It puts food on local people's tables, literally those who eat the oryx, and then also the kind of industry that's formed around hunting them, guiding, and certainly taxidermying them and creating the mounts, which has been really great to get to have access to that. So it's a really complicated issue, and something that like it's really easy. I mean, I'm sure it wasn't like an easy operation to get them here and to breed them and to release them, but now it's an even more complicated and difficult issue to figure out how do we actually live with them here in southern New Mexico, and they are living, beautiful creatures as well. So
Yeah. I think your work is a great opportunity to have that discussion. And I know in addition to being at Lincoln Historic Site and thinking about some of these themes related to the oryx species, you've also had some personally meaningful encounters with subject matter. Maybe you could share a little bit about
absolutely.
that with folks.
I'll even pull a little bit. I'll have to show you on my computer screen. But so my grandfather, my maternal grandfather, he used to participate in these gun shows. Basically, they were these like Old West pageants or performances, and he would tour around southern New Mexico, basically putting on these different shows in different towns. And they were like stunt people. He would do like backflips off of like this second story facade of like the Old West style towns, and they would kind of do these like shootout plays all over southern New Mexico. And my grandpa, his name is Hoyt, he passed away this past summer. And at his funeral, a family friend his father actually was in these plays with my grandfather. He brought a scrapbook, an album over, and a collection, archive of photographs from that time. And I'd seen a lot. My grandparents had like clippings, newspaper clippings, and those types of things. And so it was definitely something that like we were all really aware of my grandpa having done when he was younger. But I was given a tour of the Lincoln Historic Site by the DCA crew up there, and it just made me think about this archive of photos of my grandfather. And I went and looked at the photos after that night, and I found this photo. This is taken during the pageant that happens every year up there, where they reenact the story of like Billy the Kid and the Lincoln County War. And this is actually my grandfather right here, with like a group of spectators, and you can see the old Lincoln Historic sign there in front of the courthouse, which is right at the entrance of town there. And so let me select some more of these photos.
Wow.
Yeah, and so
really
I'm starting and in the beginning process of making some other work that references this, and I'm really interested in this as like something that one some of my family participated in. I think it speaks to the economy of violence in southern New Mexico. A lot of my other bodies of work are about the legacy of violence in New Mexico, colonial violence, and I think that these photos kind of serve as another opportunity to kind of look into that as an entry point. So I'm actually going to make a video piece here in the next couple of weeks about this with a collaborator from Las Cruces that I work with on a bunch of other video pieces. But yeah, so that's something, another kind of cool connection that I knew my grandfather had traveled in the area for that, but I wasn't exactly specifically, I hadn't like caught my eye last summer before I even knew about this residency application, you know.
Yeah.
And then going back at like being in Lincoln and looking at the photos, I was like, oh, some of these are actually taken here. And so that was a really cool, unexpected, like personal tie to the site itself there in Lincoln.
Yeah. Well, that's
Yeah,
serendipitous. That's a really cool like discovery to make along the way. Like you mentioned, gun violence is a theme that comes up within your body of work. Maybe you can share more about some of your past pieces. I know that Still Playing with Fire is one of your multimedia projects that's been
yeah,
exhibited at various points in time in Arizona and New Mexico. And you
yeah,
photograph your family in those works. Can you
absolutely.
just share more about that project
So,
and
Still Playing with Fire is my longest body of work, ongoing body of work, and it began in 2017 is when I first made the first images for it, and I was living in Arizona. I was living in Tempe, outside of Phoenix, and coming back for the summers and being really really interested in my family. I was there in I was going to school studying journalism, and I'd grown up wanting to be a photojournalist and get out of Las Cruces and get to like see things beyond my personal surroundings, and I kind of became a little disillusioned with it. I was kind of getting grossed out on like this idea of just like dropping into other people's communities and then taking something through photography, and then the biggest like sticking point was then only showing that work outside of the community usually, and so it kind of changed the way that I was thinking about photography in general. And then I discovered fine art photography through taking classes at an art school. And so I came back and I was making all this photographs of my family, and it kind of just came together. And over time, and at first it was just really simple, like just going over to every person's house and taking photos, and so celebrations and specific days and random days in the summer. And then it kind of developed to form around these three different deaths in my family that happened through one before and then two during the time that I was making the work. One was my younger cousin's overdose in 2020. He overdosed on fentanyl, and then my uncle's killing in 2019, and then my grandfather was shot while in police custody in the 70s. He was an enrolled Agua Caliente man who was living here in Las Cruces, raising his kids with my grandmother, who is from Chamberino, which is a town here near Las Cruces, and they were living here in Doñana, and he was arrested, and he was shot in the bullet passed through him, and he died later, coping with the pain of the wound. And so those three moments that I was like starting to address within the work kind of really quickly became the center of it. And you know, the other things I had been photographing around Las Cruces like connected these specific ways that people still suffer here in Las Cruces, these people with generational ties to the area, to the deserts surrounding, the neighboring deserts, and these people who are indigenous or Chicano or different levels of connection here, but these brown people who had been murdered in the past and are still experiencing violence. And So I just wanted to draw a connection from the current violence happening in New Mexico that could be extrapolated to violence happening across all colonial occupied lands. But I was looking really specifically at Las Cruces, and then even more specifically at these deaths in my own family that was like my point of entry into understanding this on a personal level, because it felt like the way that I wanted to make work was by looking inward, and so looking at the things that impacted me directly, and then extrapolating that to have a larger conversation about the world at large. And so yeah, I have that on my website as well. I can show a couple. I can just kind of scroll through this a little bit, and yeah.
Yeah, we'd love
Mhm.
to see that. And we will
So
drop the link at the
this photo
end
was
for
actually made at
folks
Fort
to
Selden,
view.
which is a historic New Mexico historic site here near Las Cruces. And yeah, so this is just some of the work made here in Las Cruces, and all these portraits are of people in my family, or they're photos taken at family homes or in the um, surrounding land and community. So yeah, I'll share that link
Yeah.
at the end in the chat.
Yeah, I mean, the work is beautiful, and I think it's very accessible because the stories you share are those of so many others
Mhm.
within our state and region. And I just think the contrast between the works of that project, Still Playing with Fire, with what you found in the archive as well, is going to be really interesting to see how you
Yeah,
reconcile those in the future.
absolutely. I mean, I think
So,
the kind of the tension is the way that um, that these things start to perpetuate themselves on a cultural level, being in New Mexico, but also like on an individual level, and thinking, I think about like the way that these stories are retold, but also further perpetuated through photography and through my own art and my participation in, um, I see myself as like holding a critical eye to them, but I'm also continuing to perpetuate them in some sort of way to the benefit of myself through getting further art opportunities. And so I'm really eager to engage with, this life and this archive of photos that, was something that my grandfather was fought in Vietnam. He was drafted, and he was in college during the time, but he didn't have the GPA to avoid the draft, and he was taken to a different place and forced into violence, and came back and found a life and a form of like recovery through participating in theater, and that's what it was. And so it's a really incredible thing, and it's something that like we all really admired. I mean, people in my family, we all really admired about him, and he was such a chill guy that it's crazy to imagine him doing backflips in these shows. And so yeah, I'm really eager to engage with that because it's such a special thing to so many people in my family. And same with the Oryx, and these are things from my mom's side of the family, and the other body of work is work from my dad's side of the family. And so it's great to kind of like get to have these moments with things that are actually um, part of my own heritage as an individual.
yeah. And I love the nuance that you get to when you're telling these stories, multiple different ways of looking at a subject matter. You mentioned Las Cruces quite a bit, so I feel like we can't overlook
Yeah,
your gallery.
yeah,
Is it
CAV
CAV
Gallery. So
Gallery? Is
actually,
that
it's
correct?
currently not in operation, and it's CAV Gallery. I I ran 15 exhibitions, and it's kind of a hiatus, but an indefinite hiatus for it. I'm still like seeking out curation opportunities and stuff, but I opened it in 2021, and it was named after my little cousin Cristian Anthony Vallejo, who was the cousin that I think about in the Still Playing with Fire body of work, who passed away in 2020. And so, I'm sorry, did you have a specific question about it, or did you want me to just?
Yeah, I just was curious if you could tell us more about its origin story and maybe if it's dormant
Yeah,
now, so to speak, maybe some
I
of the
mean,
activity that
it's
did take
definitely, it's like
place
the most
there.
important project that I have had in the last few years. It was really special place to me, and it was when I was living in Phoenix, I saw a lot of people who were having shows in their studios and or had these little crews of artists who were putting on really cool events. And I was really impressed by it. And I moved back during COVID, and so I had kind of had aspirations of doing something similar wherever I was going to live. But moving back to Las Cruces, I was like, oh, this would be a really great way of sharing my work with people in Las Cruces, because I hadn't really received a lot of institutional opportunities up to that point. And so I um, I started with the idea of doing it in my studio. I used to rent a really small, it was like a 15 by 15 square room that I rented downtown, and I was going to do it there. And then another space became available in the same building that was much bigger. Um, and so for the first four shows, we did them in this upstairs loft that used to be a yoga studio and a dance studio. And I showed, we did 15 exhibitions. We did, I believe it was seven uh, solo exhibitions throughout that, including one of my own. It was my first ever opportunity to do a solo exhibition anywhere. And also for all of the other um, uh, artists, it was their first solo exhibition in a gallery setting, at least. And we primarily showed Indigenous and Chicanx or Latinx artists, but we showed a lot of different people as well. And it became a really cool opportunity for working with a lot of people here in Las Cruces, but also we showed a lot of people from outside. We showed artists from Guatemala and um, from New York and California, and a lot of Arizonans and Texans, and it was really cool to get to kind of put up from my curatorial standpoint, a lot of what the really cool art was happening in Las Cruces, these really special artists from here, but then also bring in these really special outside perspectives. And my goal was always just to show people in Las Cruces art that felt relevant to actual life here, at least from my curatorial perspective. And so it was really great. There was a ton of community support, and it was a really fantastic run in order to get to do those 15 exhibitions. And then it just kind of came time. I received a Lightwork residency in Syracuse, New York last fall. And so I kind of was beginning to get these individual opportunities. And so I decided to take the step to indefinitely kind of close it down. But curation is like become one of my passions, and working in the gallery setting and doing the installation and the preparatory work and all those different things has become really special to me. So I definitely intend to seek out more opportunities to be in that kind of seat and to work with other artists in that capacity.
Well, you wear a lot of hats, and I do think it's commendable for folks who want to gain curatorial experience. I can't say I know someone personally who decided to open up their own gallery and also be able to exhibit. So you have a lot of different skills and talents. I know someone's putting you in the hot seat and asks, will you bring back the gallery?
I don't know. I don't know.
That.
Probably not in the same capacity that it existed before, because I think that I would want to do something that is take another approach at it. A big part of doing it was because my cousin had just passed away, and I knew I wanted to make some sort of art space, but I had this strong compulsion to memorialize him through it as a project in order to personally, like to process the grief myself, because a big hang up I had when he passed away, because we grew up really close, was this thought of like, he's no longer going to be present in the important moments in my life in a way. Like he was a subject, a lot of my portraiture, he knew about my work, and beyond that, like just thoughts of like, he's not going to be there when I have kids, my kids won't get to know him, he won't be there if I get married, like all these important life events. And so creating this gallery, that was what I worked on, every day, even when I worked for I had a bunch of different jobs during that point, and it was still just like in order to keep this one project going. And he became like a really key part of that. But then, and so he's a part of it every single day. And then it also turned into this thing where I felt a little bit like it my connection to him righted on this place. And so in order to take the next step into my own practice, I needed to let go of it. And I also needed to prove to myself that he wasn't just like occupying a place, or that he's with me in everything that I do. Same with all of my family, my ancestors that have passed, and they're still working through these things with me when I'm in Lincoln, or I'm in Las Cruces or Syracuse or wherever. And so I don't know, I haven't really put any direct thought into like starting it up anytime soon. I'm really enjoying being kind of in this zone where I'm making work, and I'm really engaged with my practice, and working on projects with other people and those types of things is still important to me. But I think it's more on the art creation rather than the curation, or I'm sorry, the art creation, not the curation, and not the exhibiting of it exactly. But down the road, I mean, I loved it so much. It was challenging, but it was really important to me. So down the road, I definitely could find myself in a situation where I'm kind of overseeing something like that again.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like a cathartic process for you in general. And we're actually coming up on 30 minutes already. So before we sign
Yeah.
off, which is that just flew by, I feel like we could keep talking for a while. The time flew by. For those of us joining tonight or watching this later on, this Artist in Residency program, as I mentioned before, is a partnership between New Mexico Arts and our historic sites. We have a lot of different programs at New Mexico Arts, though. So one that I can think of right now for any artists who are out there who have their own organizations or programs or communities is our grants program. There's some awesome funding opportunities there. We have our arts education program. I'm here representing the public art program, which is now hosting these artist in residence opportunities. So just check us out on newmexicoarts.org for any other upcoming opportunities, or just reach out to us if you have an idea and are looking for some support. That's what we're here for. We are the State Arts Agency. Next Thursday, Marcus will have his artist talk at Lincoln Historic Site in Lincoln, New Mexico. That's at 1 p.m. on Thursday, March 28th. If you're unable to make it, don't worry, because we will actually be recording the event and posting it for a later viewing. As you can imagine, the Wi-Fi there is pretty limited, so a live stream is not really conducive to the site. And then before we wrap up, just Marcus, if you want to let folks let people know where they can find your work, or
Absolutely.
keep up with
I
what
will
you're
post the
doing.
link to my website in the chat in just a second. I'll also post it on my Instagram story right away. It's the link in my bio. It'll take you to my website as well, but I'll post the link that will directly show you the Oryx work and the archive of photos from the Chaparral gunslingers or gunfighters. And as far as like upcoming things, once I finish this residency, August 5th or April 5th, I have to go to Phoenix immediately. I'll be exhibiting some work at an event at basically I do creative direction for a brand called Los Niños de la Tierra. We're partnering with a kitchen out of Phoenix called Más Amable, and we'll be hosting an event with DJ Python, who's a Chilean American DJ that we're really excited to bring to Phoenix. And I'll be showing some work that I made in Phoenix while I was there, and I recently went back and made some portraits of a group of friends there. And then after that, May 30th, I'll be opening my first ever museum solo exhibition at the Ruben Center in El Paso, Texas, at UTEP, the University of Texas El Paso, Thank you. Which I'm really looking forward to. That will be still playing with fire. It'll be work from that body of work, and hopefully also showing this video that I'm going to be making while here in residency. It hasn't been made yet, but I've been talking with the curator there, and so once we get that made, hopefully that will also be shown and included in that work. And I showed the body of work at Cav Gallery in 2021. But I have so much work with it that I'm going to be able to show pretty much all new work and maybe a couple of like the pieces that are relevant to this interpretation of the work. But I'm really excited because there's going to be a ton of new work that I've never shown before for that. And yeah, so 28th in Lincoln, 28th of March in Lincoln, 7th of April in Phoenix, and then May 30th in El Paso, which is kind of just a dream to get to participate in these things and all these places that have a lot of personal and generational significance. I get to have the privilege to get to show art there, so I'm really looking forward to these things, and I hope you all get to check them out. But I'll post the link to my website here in the chat, and then I'll also post the link on my story and to the website so you can see the work. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm so excited for you. Some people in the comments say thank you, can't wait. Someone says Borderlands tour. Someone says pretty cool guy. I'll give him a follow. What is,
Yeah,
can you drop your
absolutely.
IG handle right now?
It,
It's Marcus
it's just
Chormicle.
Chormicle. I'll post it in here real quick. Which is just my last name.
Okay. So Instagram Chormicle.
Yeah,
Do you have,
yeah, I'm
and
gonna
you have your
post that
website
right
as well?
here. Let's see, wait, let me copy and paste. It might not. There we go. There's a link to the website.
Perfect.
I'll post it. I'll put it on my Instagram story too right now in case people exit out of the live and aren't able to go back to it. But yeah, thank you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for your time, Marcus. I can't wait to see what some of your final work looks like next Thursday and just continue to see how your creative practice grows. Thank you, everyone, for logging in. Keep an eye on what Marcus is doing, and as well, don't forget to give New Mexico Arts a follow if you aren't already, and keep an eye on our website for other awesome
Thank you. Appreciate
opportunities.
it. Thank you all. Thank you, Olivia. Thank you, New Mexico Arts and Lincoln.
Thank you. Great. Have a great night, everyone.